I wasn't late. That detail mattered to me more than it should have. Because when something feels wrong, the first thing you do is check whether it's your fault. My phone said 6:12 p.m., the same time it always did when I pulled into the driveway. Same traffic lights, same slow turn at the corner, same narrow stretch of road where the trees lean in too close, like they're listening. Winter had settled in early that year, the kind of cold that makes every breath feel intentional. Across the street, porch lights glowed soft and yellow, like small promises that nothing bad ever happens in houses like these. Our house looked normal. The porch light was on, the curtains were open, my car was the only one in the driveway. Still, I sat there longer than usual. I don't know why. There was no sound, no movement, just a pressure in my chest, like someone had rested a hand there and forgotten to move it. I told myself I was tired, that work had drained me, that winter always made things feel heavier than they needed to be. I grabbed my bag and stepped out of the car. The porch steps creaked under my boots. They always did. Jason used to joke that the house complained every time we came home. I reached for the door. It wasn't locked. That stopped me. Jason had started locking it lately. He said it was because of the news, because of break-ins, because you never know anymore. But I knew the real reason. People lock doors when they're trying to keep something contained. I stepped inside. The first thing I noticed wasn't who was in the living room. It was the quiet. No TV, no music, no clinking from the kitchen. The house felt alert, like it knew I was there. I closed the door slowly. The click of the latch sounded too loud in the stillness. And then I saw them. Everyone. My mother, Donna, sat on the couch with her hands folded too neatly in her lap, like she was afraid if she moved them something would spill. My father, Gary, stood near the dining table, not sitting, standing like he didn't plan to stay long. My sister, Olivia, was near the window, arms crossed, staring into the dark like the glass was safer than the room behind her. And in the center of it all was my husband, Jason Miller. He wasn't sitting, he wasn't pacing, he was just standing there, still, like a man bracing for impact. No one looked at me, not even for a second. Instead, every pair of eyes in that room was fixed on Jason and Olivia. I took a step forward, my keys still clenched in my hand. They made a soft metallic sound. That sound felt wrong, like I had interrupted something. I forced a small laugh, the kind you use when you're trying to pretend you belong somewhere. "What's going on?" I asked. No one answered. Donna's eyes flicked toward Jason. Gary cleared his throat but didn't speak. Olivia hugged her arms tighter around her. Jason didn't look at me. And that's when something cold slid into place inside my chest. They weren't surprised I was home. They had been waiting. I set my bag down slowly. "Did something happen?" I asked. Still nothing. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was intentional. I looked at Olivia. "Why are you here?" She didn't answer, didn't even look at me. Her reflection stared back at her from the window, pale, tense, already somewhere else. I turned to Jason. "Can you please look at me?" His jaw tightened, but he didn't lift his head. Donna finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Emily, sit down." It wasn't a request. I sat. The couch felt colder than it should have. The space beside me stayed empty. Seconds passed, then more. Finally, my father straightened his shoulders like he'd reached the end of a long argument with himself. He looked at Jason, then at Olivia. Only then did he look at me. "We need to talk," Gary said. That sentence doesn't need volume to hurt. It just needs timing. And in that moment, with terrifying clarity, I understood one thing. Whatever this was, it wasn't new. They had talked about it before. They had chosen their places in the room. They had agreed on something. And I was the last person who was supposed to know. Jason's eyes didn't leave the envelope, not even when I set my purse down, not even when I stepped closer. He looked like a man trying to remember the order of something he'd promised himself never to say out loud. Olivia stood behind him, too close, not touching him, just close enough that her shadow fell across his shoulder like a warning. Mom, Donna, kept her hands folded in her lap so tight her knuckles had gone pale. Dad, Gary, stood near the dining table with his palm braced against the edge like the wood was the only thing keeping him upright. And me, I stood in the doorway of my own living room feeling like I'd walked into a photograph that had been taken without me. The heat kicked on with a soft whoosh. The vents rattled. It was the only thing in the house that sounded normal. I swallowed. My mouth was dry in a way winter air can't explain. "What is this?" I asked. My voice came out gentle, not because I felt gentle, because the room demanded it. Jason's throat moved. He still didn't look at me. Gary cleared his throat the way he did before saying grace, but he didn't pray. He just said, "Sit down, Emily." That's when my stomach tightened, because in my family, sit down meant one of two things: someone died or someone lied. I didn't sit. I stepped forward instead, slow like the floor might change under my feet. I pointed at the envelope. "Who brought that here?" Olivia's eyes flicked to mine, then away, like my face was too hot to touch. Jason finally spoke. His voice was quiet. "Detective Cruz." The name landed like a cold coin dropped into a glass. "Detective?" I repeated. Donna made a small sound, half breath, half regret. Gary's jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. I stared at Jason. "Why is a detective in my house?" Jason looked at the carpet. "I didn't want you to find out like this." That sentence didn't make sense. I let it hang anyway. In my head, I tried to stack it against the day I'd just had. Emails, traffic, groceries, the small, tired piece of routine. Nothing in my day matched detective. Nothing in my life matched "I didn't want you to find out like this." I took another step. "Find out what?" Jason's fingers tightened on the envelope. The paper crinkled. Donna finally lifted her eyes toward me. Her eyes looked wet, but not fresh wet. Not tears that had just arrived, more like tears that had been living there for a long time. Gary said, "Emily." He said my name the way you say a word you're afraid will break. I shook my head. "No, don't do that. Don't say my name like it's a warning." Olivia's arms were crossed so tightly her shoulders looked raised. She whispered, "Emily, please." Please. That word made me colder than the window glass. I looked at her. "Why are you here?" She flinched. "I came because—" Gary cut in, "because I asked her to." That landed hard. My father didn't ask people for help, not unless he was desperate. And my father didn't invite my sister into my house without telling me, not unless he was trying to control the shape of what happened next. I turned back to Jason. "Where is this detective?" Jason blinked, like he'd forgotten the next part. He nodded toward the hallway. "She's in the kitchen." Of course she was, because in our house, the kitchen was where we tried to make hard things look ordinary. Coffee, water, a chair pulled out, a calm voice. I walked toward the kitchen without taking my coat off. My boots thudded softly on the rug. The hallway light was on. Family photos lined the wall. Jason and me at the county fair, Olivia at her college graduation, Donna and Gary on their anniversary trip. Every picture felt like it belonged to a different family. When I reached the kitchen doorway, I stopped. A woman sat at my table. Not casually, deliberately. straight-backed, hands folded neatly, a dark winter coat draped over the chair beside her. She looked like someone trained not to take up extra space. Her hair was pulled back. Her face carried the kind of calm you only get after watching too many people fall apart. She stood when she saw me. "Emily Carter?" she asked. Her voice was polite, not warm, not cruel, just official. "Yes, I'm Detective Elena Cruz." She held up her badge for just a second, long enough for my brain to register that it was real. Then it was gone again. The legal envelope sat on the table in front of her. It looked even more wrong under my kitchen light, like a piece of the outside world that had no business sitting next to my fruit bowl. Detective Cruz gestured toward the chair across from her. "Please sit." I didn't, not yet. I kept my hands at my sides so she wouldn't see them shake. "What is this?" I asked. My voice came out gentle, not because I felt gentle, because the room demanded it. Jason's throat moved. He still didn't look at me. Gary cleared his throat the way he did before saying grace, but he didn't pray. He just said, "Sit down, Emily." That's when my stomach tightened, because in my family, sit down meant one of two things: someone died or someone lied. I didn't sit. I stepped forward instead, slow, like the floor might change under my feet. I pointed at the envelope. "Who brought that here?" Olivia's eyes flicked to mine, then away, like my face was too hot to touch. Jason finally spoke. His voice was quiet. "I'm sorry." Detective Cruz held up a hand. "Emily," she said gently, "I'm going to say something, and it may feel like the floor moved." My heartbeat was loud in my ears. I finally sat down. The chair scraped against the tile. Detective Cruz opened the envelope, and in that moment, before she even spoke, I knew. Whatever was inside had been waiting longer than I had. The knock didn't sound urgent. That was the worst part. 3 soft taps, measured, polite, like whoever stood on the other side already knew they were expected. No one moved. The house held its breath again, the same way it had when I first walked in, only now the silence felt tighter, sharper, like something was about to be named. Detective Elena Cruz glanced at me, not asking permission, checking readiness. I didn't feel ready, but readiness didn't seem to matter anymore. My father, Gary, straightened his jacket slowly, the way he did before funerals, before meetings where men shook hands and made decisions that changed other people's lives. "I'll get it," he said. My mother flinched. "Gary," he cut her off with a look, not unkind, just final. When he opened the door, cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of wet pavement and wool coats. A man stood on the porch, mid-50s, gray at the temples, a thin leather briefcase held close to his side like it was part of him. He smiled politely. "Gary," he said, "it's been a long time." My father nodded. "Klein." The name landed heavy. I didn't know why yet, but my body reacted before my mind did. Mr. Klein stepped inside, wiping his shoes on the mat like this was an ordinary visit, like he wasn't carrying 30 years of consequences in a leather case. His eyes found mine and held. "Emily Carter," he said, not asking, confirming. "Yes," I replied. He inclined his head slightly, a gesture that could have been respect or apology. "I'm sorry we're meeting like this." I didn't respond because I was done accepting apologies I didn't understand yet. Detective Cruz gestured toward the dining table. "Let's sit." No one argued. We gathered around the table like a reluctant council. Jason sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth from his arm, but not touching, like he knew better now. Olivia took the chair across from me. She wouldn't meet my eyes. My parents sat at opposite ends, not together. That felt new. Mr. Klein placed his briefcase on the table and opened it carefully. Inside were folders, tabs, paperclip stacks, lives reduced to categories. He pulled one out and slid it toward me. "Before anything else," he said gently, "you should know that I represent the estate of Margaret Maggie Brooks." The name meant nothing to me, but something in my mother's face collapsed, not dramatically, just inward, like a building losing its internal supports. My voice stayed steady when I asked, "Who is Maggie Brooks?" Mr. Klein paused. He glanced at my parents, then back at me. "She was," he said, "the woman who gave birth to you." The words didn't explode. They didn't echo. They just settled like ash. I waited for hysteria, for screaming, for the moment movies always promise. Instead, what I felt was distance, like my life had suddenly stepped a few feet away from me. I repeated the name quietly. Margaret Brooks. Mr. Klein nodded. "She passed away in November." My breath caught. I didn't know why that mattered so much. "She never stopped looking for you," he continued. "She filed reports, appeals, letters. She wrote to hospitals, courts, churches." I pictured a woman writing letters no one answered. My chest tightened. "She believed," he said, "that something had been taken from her." I looked at my mother. She stared at the table like the wood grain was a confession. "Why now?" I asked. Mr. Klein folded his hands. "Because Maggie left instructions," he said. "Very specific ones." He opened another folder. "She established a trust." Jason inhaled sharply beside me. "A trust?" I repeated. "Yes," Mr. Klein said. "Funded gradually over decades. It wasn't large at first, but she kept adding to it." I shook my head slowly. "This isn't about money," I said. "No," Mr. Klein replied. "It never was." He slid another document toward me. "The trust was conditional." My stomach tightened. "Conditional on what?" He met my eyes. "On proof of identity." The room went very still. Detective Cruz leaned forward slightly. "This trust," Mr. Klein continued, "was Maggie's final attempt to force the truth into daylight." I stared at the papers. "So why involve my family? Why involve my husband?" Mr. Klein exhaled. "Because your parents intervened." The sentence cut clean. My father's jaw tightened. "Gary," my mother whispered. Mr. Klein didn't raise his voice. "Years ago, Maggie attempted to reopen her case quietly through civil channels." I looked at my parents. "You blocked it," I said. My father corrected me. "We closed it." Mr. Klein didn't hesitate. "You paid to close it." The air left my lungs. Paid. Not confusion. Not chaos. Choice. Detective Cruz's voice cut in calmly. "Mr. Bennett, this is where intent becomes relevant." My father snapped. "We had a family." My mother finally spoke, her voice shaking. "They told me my baby was dead," she said. "They said there was nothing I could do." My chest tightened. "And when you saw me?" I asked. She looked at me then, really looked. "I didn't think," she said. "I acted." The sentence collapsed under its own weight. Acted. Not protected, not saved. Acted. Mr. Klein didn't argue. He simply said, "You didn't report the switch." My father slammed his hand on the table. "Enough." Detective Cruz didn't flinch. "No," she said calmly. "This is exactly enough." She turned to me. "Emily," she said, "your parents didn't just raise you. They replaced you." The word hit harder than anything else. Replaced. I looked at Olivia. "You knew?" I said quietly. Her eyes filled instantly. "I found the letters when Grandma died," she whispered. "I was 20. "How long did you know?" I asked Jason. His voice barely existed. 3 months. 3 months of sleeping beside me, 3 months of normal mornings, 3 months of silence. "This wasn't about an affair," I said slowly. No one disagreed. "This was about ownership." Mr. Klein nodded. "The trust," he said, "was Maggie's final deadline." I turned to Jason. "So why were you involved?" His eyes were red. "She named you," he said, "and she named me." Mr. Klein added quietly, "She believed your spouse would protect you when your parents wouldn't." I laughed once, not kindly. "So this was a test?" "No," Mr. Klein said. "This was a clock." I swallowed. "What happens now?" Detective Cruz answered. Now the truth becomes official. Mr. Klein closed the folder. The trust activates, he said, but more importantly, the record changes. My mother made a broken sound. No. My father stood abruptly. You can't do this. Mr. Klein's voice was steady. It's already done. Silence fell. Mr. Klein turned to me. Your name will remain yours if you choose, he said, but your origin will no longer be hidden. And Maggie? I asked. He softened. She asked me to tell you she forgives you. My throat closed. For what? For surviving. Something in me cracked open. I looked around the table, at the people who raised me, at the man I married, at the sister who carried the truth too long, at the papers that waited 30 years for me to exist. And I understood the midpoint truth completely. This story was never about betrayal between two people. It was about a life that had been quietly rewritten. And now, the ink was bleeding back through. Not on the paper, in the room, in Donna's face, in Gary's rigid shoulders, in the way Olivia kept her arms locked around herself like she was trying to keep her ribs from splitting open. And in Jason. Jason wouldn't stop staring at the folder like it could jump up and bite him. Mr. Klein didn't rush anyone. He sat like a man who'd learned that truth has its own pace, that you can't drag it faster without tearing something important. Detective Elena Cruz stood by the edge of the dining room, one hand resting lightly on the back of a chair, the other near her notebook. She looked calm, but her eyes moved like a scanner, catching every flinch, every swallowed word, every glance that meant more than it should. I realized then, this wasn't just a family talk. This was a room full of people who had practiced silence for decades, and one person trained to hear it. Mr. Klein finally spoke again, softly. Emily, I want to be very clear about one thing. I didn't answer. I didn't nod, because if I nodded, it would mean I agreed that he had the right to keep using my first name, like we were on the same side of this table. He continued anyway. Nothing about this is your fault. It should have comforted me. Instead, it made my throat burn, because when someone says nothing is your fault, it usually means the damage is real. Jason shifted beside me. His knee bumped mine under the table, an accident, not comfort. He immediately pulled back like even contact was too much to ask. I stared at the folder, at my name printed in clean black letters. Emily Carter. And beneath it, in smaller type, like a whisper the page didn't want to say out loud, also known as blank. There were blanks where a life should have been. Mr. Klein slid another sheet forward. You may have questions about the trust, he said, about the legal proceedings, about why this is happening now. I waited. He looked toward Donna and Gary. But you cannot understand the now without understanding the then. Gary's jaw flexed. The muscle in his cheek jumped like a warning light. Donna's hands were still folded, but now they looked less neat, more like she was gripping herself in place. Olivia made a small sound, barely audible. Mr. Klein's voice stayed even. There was a hospital incident, he said, a power failure, a brief evacuation. I felt my fingers curl against my palm. Donna had already said something like that. The hospital lost power, babies were moved, confusion. A story that always sounded like a mistake the universe made. Mr. Klein continued, but the documents we have and the testimony recorded years later indicate more than confusion. Gary's eyes snapped up. Testimony, he said. Detective Cruz wrote something down, slowly, like she was underlining the moment. Mr. Klein looked at Gary like he'd expected the interruption. Yes, he said, testimony. Donna's breath hitched. Olivia whispered, Dad. Gary didn't look at her. He looked at Mr. Klein. What testimony? Mr. Klein opened a different folder. The paper inside looked older. The kind of old that doesn't come from time alone, but from being handled carefully, hidden carefully, reopened only when someone has to. This, he said, tapping the page, is a statement given by a nurse who was on duty that night. Donna's lips parted. For a second, I thought she might speak, but she didn't. Mr. Klein read softly, not like he was performing, but like he was reading a weather report that could still destroy a town. The nurse reported seeing a newborn removed from a bassinet and carried out through a service corridor by a woman not wearing hospital identification. The room shifted, not dramatically, just like the floor had settled a fraction lower. I looked at Donna. Her eyes had gone wet again, but the tears still didn't fall. They just stayed there, heavy. Gary said, "That could have been anyone." Mr. Klein nodded like he'd heard that excuse before. "It could have been," he agreed. Then he turned a page. And that's why the next part mattered. The nurse noted the woman's coat, a tan wool coat with a missing button near the cuff. Donna's face went pale so fast it was like the blood had been pulled away by a magnet. I didn't know about any coat, but I knew that look. That look was recognition. Olivia's eyes squeezed shut, and for the first time in my life, I saw my sister look like a child. Jason's hand moved toward mine, stopped, then rested on his own knee like he'd lost the right to touch me. Mr. Klein continued. In the years after, Margaret Maggie Brooks, he paused, letting the name live in the air, submitted letters, requests, appeals. Maggie Brooks. The name wasn't familiar in my memory, but my body reacted anyway, the way skin reacts when ice touches it. Mr. Klein's voice softened. She never accepted the hospital's explanation. I swallowed. Detective Cruz didn't move, but her eyes flicked toward me like she was watching for collapse. Mr. Klein slid another page across to me. This is a copy of Maggie Brooks' original report, he said. My hands hovered above it, hesitant, like paper could burn. At the top, in bold letters, Missing Infant Report. Below it, a date, 31 years ago, the name Margaret Brooks printed in black, and under Child, one line that made my stomach drop so hard I felt dizzy. Female newborn, removed from nursery, mother, Margaret Maggie Brooks. My mouth went dry. I looked up slowly. Why are you telling me this like I'm supposed to recognize it? I asked. Mr. Klein didn't answer right away. He looked at Donna, then Gary, then Olivia, then Jason, and then back to me. Because, he said, the legal question isn't whether the baby went missing. It did. The legal question is whether you are that baby. The words didn't echo, they just landed, like snow piling up on a roof you didn't know was weak. I stared at Donna. I want you to look at me, I said quietly. Donna's head lifted, her eyes met mine, and there it was. Not hatred, not indifference, just devastation. The kind of devastation that says, I have been carrying this longer than you've been alive. I whispered, Did you take me? Donna's lips trembled. Gary's voice cut in fast. No. But his no didn't feel like truth. It felt like defense. Donna didn't speak. Olivia covered her mouth with her hand. Jason squeezed his eyes shut. I repeated the question slower, calmer, like calmness could force honesty. Donna, did you take me? Donna's shoulders collapsed. Not all at once, just enough that I saw she was done holding herself upright. I didn't go there to steal you, she whispered. My blood went cold. I laughed once sharp and small. That's not an answer. Donna's eyes filled fully now. They told me mine was gone, she said. They said she died. I felt something twist in my chest. Not sympathy, not yet. Just the sick understanding that grief can make people capable of anything. she continued, voice shaking. I was out of my mind. I was walking those halls, asking people, begging them. Gary said her name, warning, Donna. She didn't stop. And then I saw you, she whispered. My skin prickled. You were crying, she said. So small, so red. And no one was looking at you. The room went so quiet I could hear the heater click. Donna's voice broke. I told myself if nobody was looking, maybe nobody would notice. I stared at her. My tongue felt thick. So what? You just... Donna shut her eyes. I picked you up. There was no air left in my lungs. I picked you up and I walked, she whispered. I walked like I belonged there, like I had the right. I couldn't move. I couldn't blink. Gary's hands clenched around the chair back. That's not how it happened, he said too quickly. Detective Cruz's head tilted slightly. That's exactly how it often happens, she said calmly. Gary glared. This is my family, he snapped. Detective Cruz didn't blink. And this is a crime investigation, she replied. The word crime sat on the table between us like a weapon no one wanted to touch. Mr. Klein spoke again, gently but firm. Emily, there's another reason the trust exists. I forced myself to look at him. What? My voice sounded far away. He slid one more document forward. This trust wasn't meant to make you wealthy, he said. It was meant to make you visible. I scanned the page. The words blurred, but one phrase cut through clean. For my daughter to restore her name to her life. I swallowed. Daughter? I didn't know how to hold that word. Not yet. Jason's voice came out rough. She did this on purpose, he said. Mr. Klein nodded. Yes. Jason looked at me, eyes red. She wanted someone to force the truth, he whispered, because she knew they wouldn't give it willingly. My stomach turned. They, I repeated. My eyes moved to Donna, then Gary, then Olivia, and then to Jason, because Jason wasn't just sitting here. Jason had helped bring this into the light. I turned fully toward him. How? I asked. His throat moved. He looked like he wanted to disappear into the carpet. I submitted the DNA. My heart stuttered. You what? His voice cracked. I didn't mean to blindside you, he said quickly. I didn't know how to say it. I thought it would come back as nothing. I stared at him like he was a stranger. You took my DNA without telling me? His eyes filled. It was from the kit. You spit in it when you did that fun ancestry thing last spring, remember? You joked about finding out you were part Viking. My throat burned. I did remember. I remembered laughing in the kitchen, casual, safe, not knowing I was handing my life to a database. Jason rushed on. Jason, he stopped, swallowing. Jason left a note and a lawyer. She said there was a trust. She said you were connected. My skin prickled at the name. Aunt Beverly? I repeated. Jason nodded, guilt pouring off him. She told me to look in the old papers, he said. She told me Donna and Gary were hiding something. She said the truth wouldn't come out unless someone forced it. My voice went thin. So you forced it. Jason flinched. I thought I was protecting you, he whispered. I laughed, soft, bitter. That word again. Protecting. Everyone in this room had used that word like it was holy, but protection that requires lying isn't protection, it's possession. I turned to Olivia. You knew too, I said. Olivia's face crumpled. I didn't know at first, she whispered. I was a kid. I found out later. When? My voice stayed calm, which scared me more than anger would have. Olivia's eyes squeezed shut. In college, she said. College. Years. decades of holidays, birthdays, phone calls, and Olivia had been living in the same family photo, carrying a secret that could split it in half. I stared at her. "You watched me build my life?" I said, "and you never thought I deserved the truth?" Olivia's tears fell. "I wanted to tell you," she sobbed. "I tried." Gary snapped. "No, you didn't." Olivia looked at him, trembling. "I did," she whispered, "but you threatened me." Gary's face hardened. "I protected this family," he said. My voice turned icy. "You protected your control." Silence. Detective Cruz wrote again, slowly. Mr. Klein closed his folder like he was sealing a chapter. "This is the midpoint," he said, almost to himself. I almost laughed. Midpoint? As if my life was a movie and someone had just turned the page. Mr. Klein continued, voice steady. "Emily, the deeper truth is not about an affair, not about betrayal between spouses." He glanced at Jason, then at Olivia. "The deeper truth is about identity and about the decision your parents made," Donna flinched, "to replace a life instead of grieving their own." My breath came out shaky. I looked at Donna. "What happened to your baby?" I asked. The question fell like a stone. Donna's face contorted with pain. She was sick," Donna whispered. "They said her lungs—" Gary cut in. "Donna, stop!" Donna's voice rose for the first time. "No, no more stopping!" She looked at me, tears pouring now. "They told me she was gone," she said. "They told me my baby died." My chest tightened. "Did she?" I asked. Donna's mouth opened, closed. Gary's face went blank. That blankness told me the answer wasn't simple. Detective Cruz leaned forward slightly. "Mrs. Bennett," she said gently, "this matters. If you were told your baby died, there should be records." Donna sobbed. "There weren't," she whispered. "Not the way there should have been." Mr. Klein added, "And that's part of why the nurse's testimony mattered and why the state reopened the file." The room felt smaller, more airless. I looked around the table. Everything I knew was there, and it still felt like I was the only one standing outside of it. Jason's voice was small. I'm sorry." I didn't respond, because apology doesn't give time back. I looked at Mr. Klein. "So, what happens now?" I asked. He answered calmly. "Now the trust activates," he said, "but more importantly, the record changes." Donna made a broken sound. Gary pushed back his chair sharply. "You can't do this," he said. Mr. Klein didn't raise his voice. "It's already filed," he replied. "The amendment will appear. The sealed documents will unseal under court order." Gary's eyes flashed. "This will ruin us." Detective Cruz's voice was flat. "This already ruined someone," she said, looking at me. I felt my throat tighten. "Where is Maggie Brooks now?" I asked, and the words surprised me with how steady they were. Mr. Klein's eyes softened. "She is alive," he said. "She's been notified through legal counsel." A pressure built behind my eyes. Alive. Somewhere a woman was alive. A woman who had been missing me longer than Donna had known me. I looked at Donna again. "Did you ever think about finding her?" I asked. Donna shook her head fast. "No, I couldn't." "Why?" I asked. Her voice broke. "Because if she found you, I would lose you." There it was, the raw truth, not love, fear. I swallowed hard. "And you thought I belonged to you." Donna sobbed. "I thought you belonged with me, because I raised you, because I cut her off quietly. "You kept me." That word, kept. It did something to the room. Gary's face tightened like I'd hit him. Olivia cried harder. Jason went still, like he was trying to be invisible. Detective Cruz watched me with something like respect. Not warm, not comforting, just recognition. I stood slowly. My chair scraped. The sound was loud in the quiet, and for the first time that night, everyone looked at me. Not at Jason, not at Olivia, not at Donna and Gary. At me. I realized something then. They weren't waiting for me to discover the truth. They were waiting to see what the truth would do to me. I looked at Jason. "You stood beside me for years," I said, "and for months you carried this alone." Jason's eyes filled. "I was scared," he whispered. I nodded slowly. "I know," I said, "but fear doesn't justify silence." I looked at Olivia. "And you," I said, voice steady, "you let me call you my sister while you knew you weren't just my sister." Olivia shook her head. "You are my sister," she cried. "You always were." I didn't argue, because the painful part wasn't what we called each other. The painful part was what they refused to tell me. I looked at Donna and Gary one last time. "I don't know who I am yet," I said, "but I know who I won't be." Gary swallowed. Donna whispered, "Emily, honey." I shook my head gently. "Don't call me that right now," I said. "Not until I can breathe again." Mr. Klein gathered his papers carefully like he was handling something fragile. Detective Cruz took a step closer to me. "Emily," she said quietly, "I need you to understand. If you leave tonight, that's okay, but there are legal steps coming." I nodded. "I know," I whispered. My voice sounded calm, but inside, everything was shaking. I turned toward the hallway, toward the front door, toward the cold outside. And as I walked, I felt the weight of every year of my life shift on my shoulders, like a coat someone else had handed me at birth. Behind me, Donna cried. Gary said nothing. Olivia whispered my name once like she was trying to pull me back with it. Jason stood frozen, and for one terrifying moment I thought, if I leave, I might never come back to this version of my life. Then I thought something else, something quieter but stronger. This version of my life was never mine to begin with. My hand touched the doorknob. Cold metal. Real. Detective Cruz's voice came softly behind me. "Emily, don't sign anything tonight." I didn't turn. I just nodded once. And then I opened the door. Winter air rushed in like truth, sharp, clean, and impossible to ignore. And as I stepped onto the porch, I heard Mr. Klein speak one last time from the dining room, like a final nail being tapped into place. "Maggie Brooks left a message for you," he said, "in writing." I stopped. My breath hung in the air. I didn't turn back, but my voice came out, small. "What does it say?" There was a pause. Then Mr. Klein answered quietly. "She wrote, 'Tell her I didn't stop loving her, even when I didn't know where to put that love.'" My throat closed. I didn't cry. Not yet. I stepped down the porch steps. 1, 2, 3. The wood creaked like it remembered every version of me that had walked out of this house believing the same story. And somewhere behind those walls, the people who raised me stayed standing in their chosen places, finally realizing that silence doesn't keep a family safe, it just keeps the truth hungry. The cold hit my face harder than I expected, not because it was sharp, because it was clean. Winter air has a way of stripping things down to what they really are. No softness, no decoration, just breath and truth and the sound of your own footsteps. Detective Elena Cruz waited beside her car at the edge of the driveway, hands tucked into her coat pockets. She didn't rush me. She didn't guide me. She stood the way professionals do when they understand this moment isn't theirs. Behind me, the house stayed lit, warm, inviting, unchanged. That felt wrong. I took a few steps down the walkway before I realized I hadn't said goodbye to anyone. Not because I was angry, because I didn't know who I was supposed to be saying goodbye to. Detective Cruz opened the passenger door. "You don't have to go far," she said gently. "I know," I replied. I got in anyway. The door closed with a soft, final sound. As we pulled away, I looked back once. Jason stood in the doorway, not waving, not calling out, just watching, like a man who finally understood that love doesn't give you the right to decide when the truth belongs to someone else. We drove in silence for a few minutes. Street lights passed in slow intervals, lighting the dashboard and then disappearing again. On, off, on, off. I watched my reflection in the window appear and vanish. Finally, I broke the quiet. "You knew this would happen," I said gently. Detective Cruz nodded. "Not exactly how," she said, "but yes, cases like this don't stay contained." I stared out at the empty sidewalks. "So what am I now? A case file?" Her voice stayed steady. "You're a person who was wronged," she said, "legally and emotionally." I let out a breath. "That doesn't feel like something you can fix." She didn't try to. She dropped me off at a small motel near the highway. Nothing special, nothing memorable, a place people go when they don't want to be seen. The sign buzzed faintly above the office, a flickering vacancy that felt more honest than anything I'd heard all night. Inside, everything smelled like detergent and old carpet. The room was beige in that way meant to offend no one and comfort no one either. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands. They looked the same. That part bothered me. My phone buzzed once. Then again. "Jason." I didn't answer. Another buzz. "Olivia." I turned the phone face down on the nightstand. The heater hummed quietly. The curtains didn't quite close all the way. Headlights passed outside like strangers who didn't know they were interrupting something. I lay back fully clothed and stared at the ceiling, and for the first time since I'd walked through my front door that evening, I let myself think the thought I'd been avoiding. What if they hadn't told me? What if Maggie Brooks had died without leaving a trust? What if Aunt Beverly had stayed quiet? What if Jason had chosen comfort over truth? I would have lived my entire life believing a story that was never mine. I rolled onto my side. That realization hurt more than the lie itself. Sometime after midnight, there was a knock at the door. Soft, measured. I didn't move. The knock came again. "Emily," Jason said quietly. I sat up slowly. I didn't answer right away, not to punish him, to steady myself. Finally, I said, "Go away." "I just want to talk," he replied. I walked to the door, but didn't open it. "Through the door," I said. There was a pause. "I should have told you sooner," he said. "Yes," I replied, "you should have." Silence. "I thought I was protecting you," he said. I leaned my forehead against the door. "That's what everyone keeps saying." Another pause. "I didn't know how to say it without destroying everything." I closed my eyes. "Jason," I said, "you didn't destroy everything." He didn't respond. I continued, "You just stopped it from being fake." That landed. I could hear his breathing on the other side. "I didn't touch Olivia," he said suddenly. "I need you to know that." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was tragic that this was the fear he thought mattered most. "I know," I said. "You do?" "Yes," I replied. "I knew the moment I saw you both standing there. That wasn't guilt like that." His breath caught. "So what are we now?" he asked. The question hung between us, heavy, honest. I took a moment. Then I said the thing that felt truest. "I don't know," I said, "and I won't pretend I do just to make you feel better." He exhaled slowly. "That hurts," he admitted. "I know," I said. "That's how truth works." Silence again. Finally he spoke. "I'll give you space," he said, "whatever you need." I waited for him to add conditions. He didn't. That mattered, too. His footsteps moved away. A door down the hall opened and closed. I sat on the bed and cried then, not loudly, just enough to remind myself I was still human. In the morning, Detective Cruz called. She told me the legal filing had gone through overnight. My name would remain mine, but an addendum would exist. Public, permanent. The trust would activate. I could accept it, reject it, delay it. None of those choices would erase the record. She also told me something else. My parents had contacted a lawyer, not Mr. Klein, someone defensive, preparing. That hurt more than I expected, because it meant they still thought this was something they could manage, control. I drove back to the house later that day, not to stay, to confront. Jason's car was gone. My parents' cars were there. Olivia's, too. They were waiting, again. I didn't knock. I walked in. The house smelled like coffee and anxiety. Donna rushed toward me. "Emily!" I held up a hand. "Sit," I said. She obeyed. That surprised me. I stood in the middle of the living room, same spot as the night before, different person. "I'm not here to scream," I said. "I'm here to finish the conversation you started." Gary straightened. "We've spoken to a lawyer," he said. "I assumed," I replied. Donna reached for me. I stepped back. "Don't," I said. "Not yet." I took a breath. "Did you ever think about finding her?" I asked my mother. She shook her head frantically. "No," she whispered. "I couldn't. I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" I asked. She looked at me like the answer was obvious. "Losing you." The words cut deeper than anything else. "Did you ever think," I said slowly, "that I might deserve to know where I came from?" Gary spoke sharply. "You were happy." I laughed, not kindly. "You don't get to decide that." The room fell silent. I turned to Olivia. "You carried this alone," I said. She nodded, tears streaming. "I'm sorry. I hated myself for it." I believed her. That made it worse. I looked at both my parents. "I don't know what my future looks like," I said, "but I know this. It can't include pretending." Donna sobbed. Gary stared at the wall. "I'm meeting her," I said. Both of them looked up. "The woman who gave birth to me. I don't know what that means yet, but I'm not asking permission." Donna's face crumpled. "I'm losing you," she whispered. I shook my head. "No," I said. "You lost control." The distinction mattered. I picked up my coat. "I'll be in touch," I said, "when I'm ready." As I walked out, I realized this was the true disaster, not the paperwork, not the detective, not the trust. It was the moment I stopped negotiating my existence, and I understood something then with terrifying clarity. The hardest truth wasn't that I had been taken, it was that everyone who loved me had chosen again and again not to give me back. That truth stayed with me after the door closed, after the engine started, after the street lights slid past like quiet witnesses who didn't ask questions. I didn't go home, not to the house with the porch light that still glowed like nothing had changed, not to the motel with the buzzing sign and the thin walls. I drove. No destination, just movement. Winter trees lined the road, bare and patient, their branches reaching toward each other like they shared a language I didn't know yet. The heater hummed. My hands stayed tight on the steering wheel, knuckles pale, like if I loosened my grip I might float apart. I kept thinking about the word back. Give me back. As if I'd been borrowed, as if I was a thing that could be returned or kept depending on who loved me more. I pulled over at a rest stop just outside town. The place was nearly empty. A soda machine glowed too bright in the dark, and somewhere a truck idled, steady and indifferent. I sat there for a long time. I tried to remember the first memory I had. Not a story someone told me, not a photo, a real memory. I came up with the smell of detergent on folded towels, Donna's voice calling me in for dinner, Gary's hand on my shoulder when I learned to ride a bike. Real things, warm things. And yet, for the first time, I understood something I hadn't let myself say before. Real doesn't always mean rightful. My phone buzzed again. Jason. I didn't answer. Then another vibration. Detective Elena Cruz. I hesitated, then picked up. I'm okay, I said before she could ask. There was a pause on the line, the kind that told me she believed me, but only partly. I wanted you to know, she said. We're keeping this contained for now. No media, no formal charges tonight. Tonight, I repeated. Yes, she said gently, one step at a time. I closed my eyes. Where is she? I asked. Detective Cruz didn't pretend not to understand. She's nearby, she said. Margaret Brooks. She agreed to be contacted when you were ready. Ready. The word felt theoretical. I'm not ready, I said. I know, Cruz replied. That doesn't mean you won't be. We ended the call quietly. I stayed there until the cold seeped through the car doors and into my bones. Then I drove again, this time toward the small apartment I'd rented years ago and never quite moved out of. A place that still smelled like my soap, my coffee, my life before it cracked open. I let myself in, dropped my keys in the bowl, sat on the floor with my back against the couch. The silence here felt different, not expectant, not rehearsed, just quiet. I slept on the couch that night, half dreaming, half waking. In the dream, I was in a hospital hallway that kept stretching. Every door had a name on it. None of them were mine. In the morning, light pooled on the floor like it always did. The world hadn't ended. That surprised me. I showered, dressed, made coffee. Normal things. Each one felt like a small rebellion. Jason texted once, just one line. I'm here when you want to talk. I stared at it, then set the phone down. Later that afternoon, Detective Cruz called again. She's willing to meet. No pressure, public place. You decide when. I stood by the window watching snow begin to fall, soft, unhurried, like the world had all the time I didn't. Today, I said. There was another pause. Okay, she replied. I'll send you the address. The cafe was small, warm, smelled like cinnamon and burnt espresso, the kind of place people came to be alone together. She was already there. I knew it was her before she looked up. Margaret. Maggie Brooks. She sat with her hands wrapped around a mug, like she needed the heat. Her hair was streaked with gray. Her coat looked worn but clean, the cuffs frayed in a way that told a long story without asking to be heard. When she saw me, she stood, then stopped herself, like she didn't know the rules yet either. Emily, she said softly. My name sounded different in her voice, not claimed, not practiced, just careful. Margaret, I replied. She smiled a little, the kind of smile you use when you don't trust joy yet. We sat, didn't touch, didn't rush. I don't want anything from you, she said quickly. I don't know what I want. I don't want to confuse you or pull you apart. I nodded. I don't know what I want, I admitted. That's okay, she said. I've waited 31 years. I can wait longer. Something loosened in my chest then. We talked about small things first. Weather, books, the way winter light always makes rooms feel smaller. Then she said, "I looked for you." Not accusing, not pleading, just true. "I know," I said. She nodded, eyes shining but steady. "They told me to move on. They said loving a child you can't find will destroy you." She looked at her hands. "It didn't," she said. "It taught me how to live with space." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't. When we stood to leave, she didn't hug me. She just said, "Come back if you want." I believed her. Outside, the snow had thickened, covered footprints as soon as they were made. I realized then that I wasn't choosing between families. I was choosing myself. I drove home, my home, slowly, carefully, like someone learning new rules of the road. That night, I answered Jason's call. "I met her," I said. He exhaled. "How was it?" I searched for the word. "Honest," I said. Silence. "I won't pretend anymore," I added. "I know," he replied. "I'm trying to learn how not to ask you to." We didn't solve anything that night, but something shifted. Days passed, then weeks. Lawyers spoke, papers moved, names were amended, not erased. The truth settled into records and quiet conversations, not headlines. Donna called sometimes, I answered when I could. Gary less so. Olivia wrote me a letter. I read it twice, put it in a drawer. One evening I stood by my window, watching snow fall again. It landed evenly on everything. Cars, sidewalks, rooftops. No favorites, no exceptions. I pressed my palm to the glass and felt the cold. And for the first time since this began, I didn't feel taken. I felt returned, not to them, to myself. Somewhere, Donna was learning how to miss me without holding me. Somewhere, Maggie was learning how to know me without claiming me. And somewhere in between, I was learning how to live with the truth, not as a wound, but as a beginning. Quiet pause. The story wasn't finished, but for the first time, it was finally mine. The truth didn't arrive all at once after that. It came in pieces, in envelopes, in phone calls that started formal and ended awkward, in pauses where someone clearly wanted to say "I'm sorry" but didn't know where to put it. I learned quickly that the world prefers neat endings, legal ones, clear ones. Human lives don't cooperate. The paperwork moved faster than my emotions ever could. Detective Elena Cruz kept her word. There were no cameras, no neighbors whispering at the mailbox, just quiet confirmations. The record would be amended, not erased. My name, Emily Carter, would remain legally mine, but a second line would exist beneath it. Born to Margaret Maggie Brooks. Public. Permanent. A sentence that could never be unread. I stared at that line the first time I saw it and felt something strange. Not grief, not relief, recognition, like seeing your reflection in a window you didn't know was glass. Jason asked if we could meet. Neutral ground, a diner off the highway we used to stop at on road trips. The booths were cracked vinyl. The coffee tasted like it had been reheated too many times. Familiar things. He was already there when I arrived. He stood when he saw me, then stopped himself. "I don't know what the rules are," he said quietly. I slid into the booth across from him. "That makes two of us." We sat there for a minute without speaking. He finally said, "I keep replaying the moment you walked in." "So do I replied. He flinched slightly, then nodded. "I was afraid," he admitted, "that if I said it out loud, you'd disappear." I studied his face. "You don't keep someone by lying to them," I said. "You just delay the leaving." That landed. He swallowed. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. I just want you to know I see what I did now. I believed him. That didn't fix everything, but it mattered. I don't know what happens to us, I said, honestly. He nodded. I know. We paid separately. That mattered too. Donna sent me a message a few days later. Not a call, a message. I'm thinking about you. I won't come over, I won't ask, just thinking about you. I stared at it for a long time. Then I wrote back, thank you for giving me space. It wasn't forgiveness, it was acknowledgement. Gary didn't reach out. That silence felt intentional, and for the first time, I let it be. Olivia came to see me one afternoon. She stood at the door like she wasn't sure she was allowed to knock. When I opened it, she started crying immediately. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry. I stepped aside and let her in. We sat on the floor. No couch, no table between us. I didn't know how to live with it, so I tried to live around it, she said. I nodded. That's what everyone did, I said. She looked at me. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. I took a breath. I didn't lose you, but you don't get to decide how close I can be right now. She nodded, wiping her face. I understand, she said. I'll wait. That word again. Wait. Funny how powerful it became when it wasn't forced. The second time I met Maggie, it was at her house. Small, quiet, smelled like old books and lemon cleaner. She showed me a box, not dramatic, just honest. Hospital bracelets, letters she never sent, a birthday card she bought every year and never addressed. I didn't know who to be to you, she said, so I tried to be gentle. That gentleness sat between us like something sacred. I don't hate them, I told her, Donna and Gary. She nodded. I figured, she said. Hate takes energy. You've already lost enough. We drank tea, sat in silence. When I left, she hugged me then. Brief, careful, but real. Weeks passed. Winter began to loosen its grip. Snow melted into slush, then disappeared entirely. Life, inconveniently, kept going. I started therapy. That felt important. Not because I was broken, because I'd been rearranged without consent. The therapist asked me once, "What do you feel when you think about the night you found out?" I answered without thinking, "Seen." She raised an eyebrow. "Seen how?" I thought for a moment. Like my life finally matched my instincts, I said. I always felt slightly off, like a sentence with one extra word. She nodded slowly. That's common in identity trauma, she said. The phrase startled me. Identity trauma. I carried it home with me and let it sit on the counter like something fragile. Jason and I spoke less often, not out of anger, out of honesty. Neither of us wanted to pretend proximity meant healing. One evening he said, "If we don't make it through this, I'll still be grateful I didn't let the lie win." I didn't answer, but I appreciated that he finally understood what the lie had cost. Donna asked if she could come to one therapy session. I said no, not yet. She accepted it. That mattered more than if she'd argued. Months later, the legal part ended quietly. No courtroom drama, no headlines, just signatures and dates. The trust transferred. I donated most of it. That felt right. Money hadn't been the point. Visibility had. The last time I went back to the old house, it felt smaller, like a place I'd outgrown without realizing it. Donna hugged me. Gary stood back. Olivia smiled through tears. Jason wasn't there. That also felt right. On my way out, I paused at the door, the same door I'd walked through that night, the night everyone looked at my husband and my sister instead of me. I understood now. They weren't waiting for me to discover the truth. They were waiting for the truth to discover them.
And it had. That night, in that room. I live differently now. Not louder, not braver, just truer. I don't rush to fill silence anymore. I don't apologize for needing time. I don't confuse love with possession. Sometimes, late at night, I think about the baby I was, the one carried down a hospital hallway by a grieving woman who believed she was saving herself. I don't hate her for that moment, but I won't protect it either, because protecting it is what stole 31 years of truth. One evening, Maggie called. She said, "I found your first birthday card." I smiled. "I'd like to see it sometime," I said. "You can," she replied, "whenever you want." That freedom still feels new and precious. On the first anniversary of the day everything broke open, I went for a walk alone. Snow fell lightly. I watched my footprints appear, then fade, and I realized something quietly, without ceremony. I was never meant to be given back. I was meant to be given forward, to myself, to the life that could finally be lived without rehearsal. The truth didn't give me a new story. It gave me authorship, and that was enough.
Thank you for watching. Your trust, your time, and your support truly mean everything. If this video brought you value, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps this channel reach those who need it most. Stay focused, keep growing, and I'll see you in the next video.